Welcome everyone to today's Digital Intelligence Forum Sector Roundtable, Crypto ATMs, Safeguards, Compliance and Consumer Protection. I'm Alec O'Sullivan from DECA and I'll be your moderator. Coming out of DECA's recent engagements with AUSTRAC, we've seen that while legislative reform can be a slow progression, the direction of travel is incredibly clear. There is an immediate expectation for robust compliance, visible safeguards, and strong consumer protection. Today, we want to lift the hood on the ATM sector to demonstrate how major operators are proactively managing the risks associated with these higher risk channels while maintaining viable operations. Joining me today to unpack this are three industry leaders. I'll let them introduce themselves and their network. Let's start with Jonathan, then Ace, and finally Ben.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jonathan Kutner from Local Coin.
Hi, my name is Ace Gorgievski, Head of Operations at Byte Federal Australia.
And I'm Ben Brockliss from CoinFlip, the Director and Vice President of Operations here in Australia.
Thank you all. So let's dive right into the regulatory perimeter. As I mentioned, coming out of our recent meetings with AUSTRAC, it's clear that the expectation for demonstrable compliance is immediate, regardless of the pace of legislative reform. So Ace, I'll start with you. How do you apply the necessary nuance to your regulatory settings, given that ATMs are often scrutinized as high-risk channels?
Yeah, sure. So look, I want to categorize this into three categories that we do in Byte Federal Australia. So I'll mention each one at a time. So we've got a risk-based approach, we've got a late intervention model, and a context awareness scam prevention. So within the risk-based approach, I've got three subcategories in there. So which is customizable risk flags that represents wallets, which intertwines and overlaps with our blockchain analytics as well. That's mentioned in that risk-based approach. And we also have got real-time screening, so instant transaction monitoring to detect and respond to any risks. So that includes the cameras on our screens to ensure that that is the true customer, as well as the blockchain analytics, which represents any transactions that are rigorous or concerned with high risks, with sanctioned wallets, blacklisted wallets, etc. Within that, going on to the next category, which is our late intervention model. So we have these friction points, and you mentioned the experience of ensuring that there's a robust customer protection, but with a frictionless experience for legitimate customers. So we've split this into three. So with low, medium, and high friction points. So with the low friction, the onboarding and KYC is obviously required by everyone. We ensure that's obviously nice and simple and seamless for all customers. The medium friction is a little bit more rigorous, so that's mandatory warnings. So when you're a customer and you've onboarded with us, your first transaction, you're going to be prompted with a screen that's going to show warnings, understanding the risk components, those transactions, and also that is timed so they cannot proceed without reading that. There is also with over the age of 65, which is also an age-based risk indicator. So customers that are over the age of 65, we deem them as a higher risk, and we would request them to do a welfare check with us. So they would be asking a series of questions, understanding that this has been, they've onboarded themselves, there's no under duress from the client, and they will need to complete that first before prompting to the machine. And then a higher risk or higher friction would be where our safety team will review every single transaction with the ability to place accounts on hold and question whether these transactions that they're doing are safe, secure, that aspect. And the last thing is the context awareness scam prevention. So as I mentioned before about prompts and mandatory warnings, we have alerts on every in transactions. So when the customer goes to the machine, they're always prompted with the warnings, regardless if it's been their first or their 100th time at the machine. It's just to understand they're aware of that situation. We also have educational links on our websites about fraud prevention, safety and security. We did a PR not long ago with the guys in the US as well about the aspect of fraud and scams. So just to making sure that the customers are protected, but also customers are not restricted and continued like with legitimate customers, of course. And the last thing is proactive intervention. So there's additional prompts or escalation when high wallets are detected. So we will look after that as well. And that's it from my end for that aspect.
And for those listening at home, Ace, the website for is bytefederal.com. Is that right?
Bytefederal.com is the US guys. Bytefederal.com.au is us, or you can
Okay,
just do bytefederal.au.
great. And Jonathan, bringing this down to the consumer level, how are you ensuring that your compliance frameworks translate into practical, visible safeguards for the everyday user actually standing in front of a machine?
Sure. So for the on-machine and pre-transaction friction, for example, we introduce friction throughout every stage of the experience. Fraud warnings are on the latent page screensavers before the customer interacts. Direct scam awareness prompts must be acknowledged and accepted before each transaction, and permanent visible warnings are prominently placed around the screens. Also similar to what Ace said, customers over 60 encounter an additional screen during the identity verification process on their device. And this additional screen is using very simple and plain language. Ask the customer if they are sure they're not the victim of a fraud or scam, and the customer must click yes to proceed. Finally, we use on-chain monitoring to detect and prevent transactions involving high-risk counterparties that an honest person might be transacting with unwittingly. If a customer needs assistance, we have two support channels, and both are designed to intervene. For those seeking self-help solutions, our website is a dedicated fraud information hub that includes guidance on identifying common scams and safe transaction practices. For customers that contact us, we've deployed an AI-powered system on 24/7 support channels that identifies potential scam scenarios in real time. For example, when a user describes a situation associated with fraud, such as sending Bitcoin to someone they met online or responding to urgent payment demands, our system flags the risk, encourages the customer not to transact, and directs them to trusted resources such as the police. The tool intervenes really at the critical moment between a scam attempt and an irreversible transaction. Our team is also trained to identify high-risk indicators delineated in OSTRAC guidance.
That leads us perfectly into our next topic, scam prevention. So the direction of travel requires a continued focus on consumer protection measures. Ultimately, we need to stop scams before the cash is even inserted. So Ben, can you walk us through the transaction monitoring and analytics running in the background at CoinFlip? How do you actually identify a compromised user versus a regular customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've got a bunch of different procedures and tools that allow us to do this. We've mentioned blockchain analytics, but it's a tool that all of the operators use. Sometimes it's a little bit of a different flavor, but it does the same. The outcome's the same. So we're doing wallet pre-screening before a transaction happens, before we're accepting any cash, any transaction from a customer. So we're looking at the proposed destination for the funds. We're looking to see if that's had any interactions with, nefarious other wallets and things online. So there's some great analytics out there about the blockchain, especially Bitcoin and those visible ledgers that are out there. There's some good insights that we can get out of that. So we're blocking that pre-transaction, which is unique to us. The larger exchanges don't and can't do this. They're doing it on exit of funds. We're doing it before transaction are happening. So we stop a lot of people this way. And there's a few other things in there we can do as well. Wallet pinning, so we can, CoinFlip in particular, are pinning a wallet address to an individual user so that sharing and those sorts of things can't happen. I know the other guys are doing this as well. That's just on the blockchain side of things. We've got other transaction monitoring tools where we can create rules around patterns of customer behavior and amounts they're transacting and volumes. And we update those quite regularly based on advice published and other active typologies that we're seeing, provided from us and our own learnings as well. And then some of the new tools as well. We've just adopted a new tool which has AI aided as well. So whereas we had to kind of understand a problem and then write a rule to detect it, now we've got AI detection for a lot of this stuff that gives us some insight and flags stuff we can go and research a bit better to try and understand what's happening with customer transaction patterns. And I did touch on it, but collaboration as well. With other ATM operators, we talk frequently about these sorts of things. Austrac provides some great up to date information and guidance and intelligence. Other industry groups, CAMs, we've got guys always attending CAMs events and stuff, which is great as well. So yeah, learning and sharing is probably a big part of understanding what's happening out there in the market. And I have to take my hat off. Decker's probably driving a lot of this sort of interaction with us as well. So I appreciate the help you've been on this, Alex. So yeah.
Thanks, Ben. That's interesting on the AI tools. That definitely would streamline compliance, I can imagine.
Yeah, that's right. They've only just started to come out with product that helps actually. So yeah, there's a lot of new AI tools out there. Everyone's trying to bolt it into their existing tool sets as fast as they can. So we've got a couple of products that we've been evaluating and have in production at the moment, which is working out really well for us.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm sure the AI working group at Deca would be interested to hear about that as well.
I'll have to get over to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan, we know scammers often use intense, high-pressure tactics. What specific scam prevention measures and friction points have you built into the physical ATM user journey to break that psychological spell?
Sure. Well, as mentioned a couple of times now, blockchain analytics helps a lot. We also have wallet blocking internal blacklists that are really strong prevention measures to stop scam transactions before any damage is done. Beyond the machine, we've invested in retail partner education. We've launched a dedicated training module for store staff at our host locations. The program equips employees to identify the warning signs of a scam in progress, such as a customer who appears distressed or appears to be coached by phone, and gives them clear steps to intervene before an irreversible transfer is completed. In our view, the person behind the counter can really help read body language and intervene in ways a screen cannot.
Great. And part of DECA's mandate is re-establishing structured industry engagement, particularly with AUSTRAC, and collaboration is key to that. Ben, CoinFlip places a large emphasis on law enforcement relations. What does proactive collaboration with law enforcement actually look like in practice when an incident occurs?
Yeah, so I know all the operators have good touch with law enforcement, even just via our submissions at AUSTRAC and things that often leads to discussions with police. But we've kind of got on the front foot of this. We've just recently employed an ex-police financial crimes investigator with us in a full-time capacity. So just looking after the law enforcement relations, really just a contact point to manage those requests. Jed's the guy's name. So he's a great intermediary. He kind of understands what the police department are looking for, how they want to see data, things like that. So he's a good contact point for those law enforcement actual requests that we get. He also has in his mandate, he's proactively reaching out to law enforcement groups, knocking on doors, letting everyone know we're here. Also doing a bit of education. So in that proactive piece, in some of our under-resourced markets like New Zealand, actually, we're working with them. But the New Zealand regulator and reporting office don't have access to blockchain analysis tools at the moment and don't have any in-house sort of experience with it. So we're reaching out, trying to share our learnings, those sorts of things. So he's really just there to help out our law enforcement engagements, which is good for us. We were in Canberra a couple of weeks back, just met with the AFP, just a quick introduction meeting, but we think there'll be some great further engagement that comes out of those sorts of introductions and meetings with local and national law enforcement.
Oh, this has been incredibly insightful. So in parallel to the technical safeguards we've discussed, Deca is currently building out downloadable educational materials and a dedicated ATM code of conduct, similar to what we did for the digital currency exchanges a few years ago. As we build this code of conduct, what is the one non-negotiable standard regarding consumer education that every ATM operator in Australia should be forced to adopt? Ace, let's start with you and then we'll go to Jonathan.
Yeah, sure. So look, I mentioned four things in the conversation last week. So mandatory consumer acknowledgement. So customers are required to actively confirm understanding of key risks before any transaction is completed. I think it's important for all of us to do it. I think we already do it as well. And the next three, I believe all of us, based on this conversation, are already doing it. So that includes standardized scam warnings on our screens, So giving a clear understanding of the warnings across all crypto ATM providers, specifically address the common scams, which represents, impersonation, investment, and romance scams. Implementing a high-risk customer protection, so enhance education and confirmation for your vulnerable users, so they're over the age of 65 plus, and acknowledging that customers must acknowledge that the wallet that they're scanning is theirs and in their own possession. This should be shown on screen. I think that's a clear base to start our code of conduct with that aspect.
And Jonathan, what is the one non-negotiable standard regarding consumer education that every ATM operator should be forced to adopt?
Sure. We believe that support agents shouldn't act like neutral facilitators, that customer service support should be trained and required to challenge the transaction when red flags appear. In our view, if an operator suspects a customer is being scammed, they should say it directly and tell them plainly, we think you might be a victim.
And Jonathan, you also mentioned LocalCoin is using AI-powered systems on some of your channels. Could you expand on that?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, just in our customer support bots, those are trained AI bots. And then secondly, we also use it for transaction monitoring. So we use a system that's a AI-based system that includes an ontology, as well as a lot of efficiency metrics, and really does a lot of the sort of data sorting that AI is really, really good at.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for those definitive takeaways. It is clear that the ATM sector is taking proactive, measurable steps to protect consumers and collaborate with law enforcement. To everyone tuning in, Deca is actively developing an ATM code of conduct based on these exact principles, and we will also be launching new downloadable educational resources for consumers shortly. You'll be able to find all of those updates on our website at deca.org.au. And thank you to Jonathan, Ace, and Ben for your time and transparency today. And thank you all for watching.
Thanks, Alec.
Thanks, Alec.